Hello. I thought with all this rain we're having, I think I'll talk about a memory that was the very first flood I can remember being in. The El Nino of 97, 98. Place called the Inland Empire. Oh, what did I hit? So it was February, and they heard some people out in the front of the house, some commotion. Somebody eventually knocked on my door. Maybe I think I might have had just fallen asleep, or was in a half sleep. There was 8 people. There was 7 people. A total of 8 if you count the guy that had a camper, lived in his camper on the no belt, on the side of the house. Just a little, kind of a little house. 3 little bedrooms, I think it was, maybe 4. How it just seems so little, but it had that many. And then the 2 people sleeping in the one on the couch, one on the floor in the other room. All right, well, so they were trying to sweep the water out from the front of the house that was coming in through the front door, and it was raining hard. Everybody had been warned it was an El Nino kind of a year that transcends years, 97, 98. But until it happens to you. This is what I was afraid of. This thing yesterday, because I've seen that thing have water trickling into it when they had the drought, seawater, because that's sea level down there. That's just a little shallow flood. Let's see if I can go down one of these other streets. Well, to finish up the story, it just got to be too much, and they had to give up. And there was a puppy we had, and let me see here. The water just came on in, and then all you could do is try to save your stuff from getting wet. So stuff was way up in the closets on the shelves. And at one point, me and one of my friends were drinking a glass of wine together, standing in 2 feet of water, which later became 3, and the electricity was still on, so that's kind of spooky. We never got electrocuted. The little puppy was twirling around on a raft, an airbed that one of the people had been using to sleep on. Eventually some people came to rescue us, or at least came to rescue our they were a big help, the firemen, to get my equipment. Had a little relay thing going on, and so we just wound up at a hotel. One of them was familiar with the Red Cross and how they work, and we wound up at a hotel. Stayed a couple nights. One of the people was out of town when that occurred. Then we tried to go back to the house, but they eventually they made us leave because of the mold. And the area did get declared disaster. And I think the phone must not have been working, because I recall going to the phone booth. They used to have them. And constantly calling, I think that guy was Dan Lundgren. Lieutenant Governor. Is that what he was? Attorney General? I don't know. It says I was just doing what I was told. I knew I could get some money, or we could get some money. Just assume that's what you get when you have it. They gotta find you somewhere to stay and all this and all that. If they won't let you live in your place because of the mold, you don't want to get sick from the mold. So yeah, then I eventually wound up giving up on them, because all it was the same old outgoing message, and nobody was minding the fort. So that's how corrupt they are. Any government's going to have a certain amount of corruption. I wound up contacting FEMA. Had to make several trips back and forth. This happened twice a day, at least once a day. Sometimes I'd run into my that lady that was sharing that wine with me, getting her daily dose from that liquor store. That's what it was. A couple blocks away. And yeah, so I finally got hit pay dirt, and there was a big lack of communication. They said they're going to send us all the money, and I kept telling them what I was doing. So you got to contact these people. You got to contact these people. And then this lady I finally got the $800 and just trying to figure out what to do. And at one point, I remember a lady with a thick Southern accent say, "Well, you just take that check we sent you and shake it in front of those other people's face and say, 'See what you could have got if you'd only called.'" So I don't know. Maybe I was going through a greedy phase in my life and just wanted to keep all the money. But we all split up. By one of my brother that had also lived there wound up at Travel Lodge in San Bernardino. And I remember this one guy who was kind of old, and he was in the yard sleeping in his van. And one of them had an SUV they could sleep in, or they went somewhere. Everybody got split up. The guy that was out of town, he eventually came back, and we were all arguing about what to do with the money. And they said, "Well, you're like a household, you're like a family, that's enough to pay a month's rent." So all 8 of you have to stay together, and I kind of didn't want to myself. I don't know how the others felt about it, but um, we actually, that guy got in my face sort of, and so we divided the money up and went our separate ways. And then there was the debate about the guy that stayed in the camper, if he was truly a resident. Looking back, I guess you could say he was. So that's kind of like another. Well, he was like another mouth to feed. Nice enough guy. There's a story about several stories about him, separate stories. And yeah, we finally wound up with this guy who had come by. And he said, "I saw all y'all in that house, and you were just kind of wandering around and waiting in all that water." And he had just taken off. He did. I don't remember him helping any. Maybe he did. I don't know. But there was a girl there that wound up with him later. We had met, that guy and I had met, and he always said, up from Seattle, he'd always said, if you want to, you can come work on my crew in Riverside. And I wasn't familiar with Riverside, but one day we took him up on the offer, and when that brother of mine, and we moved in with him one day. So that's where we eventually wound up. And then I was mailed a letter from FEMA saying I had to pay all the money back that that I or we had mishandled it, and I'd already divided it up. I wrote him several times back and forth. I got the landlord from that other house to write something that helped in the end to solve the problem. Then there was the regime change where the election of 2000 seemed to have finally got them to leave me alone. And it was just a big mess, a big hassle. It would have been easier just to pay them off and take a loss and tell all those other people. And I did contact them, telling them, hey, I sent them copies of the letter, so they tried to hit me up, make me pay, and I'm not even head of the household with the name on the lease. I think that's where the landlord was saying I'm not even on the lease. You just sent me the check because I was the one who knew how to be a good charity case. And that's about all. I know that house was really messed up. That's about all I have to say about that flood. But one more thing. Some say that old man that wound up in the van, he was a little bit crooked, had committed some crimes in the past. Some say that he went and took a piece of plywood and put it over a drainage pipe, and that's what caused all that water to back up. That he did it on purpose. I think it was our next door neighbor who's just real sloppy with a bunch of scrap wood lying around, and when one of them found its way over there. And there was a problem with the pipe not being big enough, like a pipe that needed to have been bigger. Something about the pipes not, little one trying to go into a big one, not being able to handle the flow, get enough flow into the bigger one, or something like that. But it definitely, there was a bunch of wood that clogged it up. So that's it's just an unfortunate thing. They really take care of you these days. But back then they didn't do diddly. And that was pretty much the beginning of these severe storms becoming more and more frequent. Then you started hearing the talk, and the next millennium occurred. You started hearing the talk about the severe severity of the storms, the climate change. So, yeah, well, this will be go into the 15-minute plus category, but I gotta finish it up. So, bye.